Hi guys, it's Camilla here again. In today's video, we're discussing words relating to money. A few of them are on the board here. As you can see, I've got three questions. Is it priceless, inexpensive, or valuable? Now, you may not realise that all three of those words mean different things. In my classes, I'm often explaining the meanings of these words and their synonyms because they're really easy to confuse. So today we're going to go over what each of them mean, what their synonyms mean, and hopefully by the end of this you'll be able to use each one correctly. Let's start with cheap. Cheap means having a low price. I've put a couple of coins here to show that a cheap item would only cost a few pennies or pounds if you're in England. If you're not in England and you use a different currency, do let me know in the comments what currency you use and what would be cheap in your country. But back to our definitions, cheap means having a low price. So a synonym of cheap would be inexpensive. If expensive means that it has a high price, then a synonym of cheap is inexpensive, so it's not expensive. Then also affordable would be a synonym. If it's affordable, you are able to afford it, so it doesn't cost too much money. It's low enough for you. If you've bought the cheap version of something, you might call it the economy version. In supermarkets, you can sometimes see the word economy. For example, if a supermarket produces some of their own foods that are a bit cheaper than the brands. So for ketchup, maybe the Heinz ketchup would be a little more expensive than the supermarket's economy ketchup. So it's the same thing, but just the cheaper version. Now, one word that's kind of a synonym of cheap, but you have to be careful how you use it, is worthless. Now, worthless is actually even cheaper than cheap. It means that no one would pay anything for the item that you have. I'll show you some examples of things that might be considered worthless. So here we've got a McDonald's paper bag, the leftovers. So if there is no food in the bag and it's just a crumpled paper bag, you might say that the bag is worthless. You would be hard pressed to find anyone in the world that would give you money for this bag. So it's not just cheap, it's worthless. No one would even pay for it. And then you've got some bits here that would probably be worthless. The cup, the ball, maybe if the ball was deflated, then it would be even harder to find someone that would value it. So that might be worthless. The plastic bag could be worthless. So worthless, it's just not worth any money at all. So now hopefully you've written down the synonyms of cheap. I advise writing them down to help you to remember them for next time. And now let's talk about some words that mean expensive. Expensive means having a very high price. So buying a brand new car would probably be considered expensive, or a new house would be expensive. So let's talk about some synonyms of expensive. We have costly, so just it has a high cost. Valuable. So valuable means it is worth a lot. The value of something is its worth. So if it's valuable, it's worth a lot. Art could be valuable. Perhaps a painting by Van Gogh, that would be considered valuable. You could also say that the cost of something is exorbitant. Exorbitant would be hugely expensive. Something like a rocket ship could be exorbitantly expensive. So it's not even just that you'd have to save up your money, you would have to have lots and lots of money to be able to afford it. So the words that we've discussed so far mean either not costing very much or costing a lot. Now, there are some other words, one of them being priceless that I mentioned at the beginning, that don't mean either of those things. So let's talk about those too. Now, students always think that priceless means cheap, and it actually doesn't. It's got a more complicated meaning than that. So let's talk about it a little bit. So if something is priceless, it means that you cannot put a price on it, as in it's so special to you that money couldn't buy it. So the definition that we've got here is so precious that you can't put a price on it. In the little image over here, I've got someone that's dancing and joyful and enjoying some music, and that's something that you can't put a price on. If someone said, "Can I buy your joy?" you wouldn't be able to give them a price for it. Now, although your feelings and memories are priceless, priceless things don't always have to be emotions. They don't always have to be intangible, which means that you can't touch it. Let's have a look at some other things that you can touch, that you can feel, but they would still be considered priceless. Now, family members, you can touch and see them, but they would still be priceless. Even if you tried, and your parents probably wouldn't let you, you couldn't sell a member of your family. So even if someone said to you, "I will give you £1,000 for your sister," some of you might be tempted, but really a sister or a family member is priceless and you couldn't exchange them for any money. And then these photos here. So to some, these photos could be considered worthless. Someone that isn't in these pictures and they don't know anyone in these pictures probably wouldn't pay you any money to buy one of the pictures. However, just because these are worthless to some people doesn't mean that they're not priceless to someone else. So if these are pictures of your family members, maybe family members that you can't see anymore, then those photos might be considered priceless. You wouldn't sell them to anyone for any sort of money. Like cheap and expensive, priceless has a few synonyms. Synonyms that are also a little bit confusing. So we'll talk about those as well. Irreplaceable is one synonym. So irreplaceable means you cannot replace it. It's too precious to be replaced. If you had perhaps a stuffed toy that you've had since you were a baby, that might be priceless or irreplaceable to you. Even if someone went out and paid the same amount of money for it and bought the exact same thing, it wouldn't be the version that you love. So that could be irreplaceable to you. And then also the word invaluable. That's another one that people think means cheap, and it doesn't. So invaluable means you can't put a value on it, you can't put a price on it because it's too special. Invaluable, by the way, can also mean useful. So if you got invaluable advice from someone, if they helped you in some way, then that would be very useful. And it would also be something that you couldn't put a price on in that sense. And then finally, just a phrase that serves as a synonym. You could say something has immeasurable worth. So it has immeasurable worth. You cannot measure its worth. You can't put a number on it. If you need to pause the video, make sure you do. I'm going to put a link to a couple of adverts in the description for this video because they use the word priceless a lot, and it might help you to remember how to use the word. So if you go to the description, click on those links, and then it will remind you of how to use those words. Before you go on to the next video though, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video if you found it helpful. And like I said earlier, do tell me in the comments if you use a different currency in another part of the world, because we've been discussing currencies lots in class recently and my pupils would love to know. I'll see you in the next video. Bye! Stick with our YouTube channel to keep the learning going for today. We've got lots more vocabulary videos, or if you fancy something different, you can click on the left and head to one of our maths videos. See you soon!